a lot of people are concerned about the Rogue Squadron film because of the mixed reviews, but a lot of people are kind of downing the new Wonder Woman movie. So they're wondering, okay, no pun intended, if the Wonder Woman movie is bad, what is Star Wars Rogue Squadron going to be?
Yeah, the whole idea behind this is, look, I don't know where you guys stand. I saw the Wonder Woman movie. It had a lot of problems. It was kind of borderline on terrible, actually. The story was cool. It started out actually good, and then just completely fell apart.
Yeah.
And pretty much universally, on my personal Facebook page, if you guys search me out, I wrote this whole review on it, which is sad because actually the first Wonder Woman movie I consider the best of the DC movies, hands down. So after this travesty called Wonder Woman 1984 comes out, they actually announced they're doing a Wonder Woman 3, which we're all like, well, okay, Patty Jenkins better hopefully make it a little bit more like the first one. But then we find out, and this is where this is coming in, is the fact that if you really go back and look at it, Patty Jenkins actually took over Wonder Woman from another director. I forgot about this. And the story and everything was already kind of in place when this happened. So really, she's getting a lot of credit for the success of the first Wonder Woman movie, at least a little bit more probably than she really should. So now everybody is wondering, well, great. Now, personally, I don't think that they're going to rip this movie away from her. Look, she had a father who was like this fighter pilot slash kind of war hero. You know, this is a very personal project for her. They've already announced it. It would look really bad if they took it away.
Well, I mean, like I said, we've known that to happen with Solo, with...
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. But see, that was early on. Now that you've had, The Last Jedi... Because remember, while all that Solo drama was going on, The Last Jedi hadn't been released yet.
Right, but I think what a lot of people are fearing is that, because once again, with the Star Wars community being so divided right now, even still, I mean, they're getting some people coming back because of The Mandalorian, especially with 2 great seasons. The biggest thing is like, okay, if this is going to be once again, the next movie from this franchise.
So you're saying basically it would be better to change out, do whatever they have to do versus risk another bad film.
Exactly, because...
But here's my counter to that.
Okay.
It goes along with what you're saying, but I think what's more likely to happen is what happened with Rogue One. You get somebody in there to kind of fix it while it's being made. So you don't fully take it away from the director. You just tell the director, hey, man, sit a couple scenes out here. We're going to bring this other guy to come in and direct like 40% of the film. And, then everything will be cool. Because remember, everybody forgets that Gareth Edwards was running into the same hot water that Lord and Miller were. To the point where a lot of people were really worried. Because remember the whole big reshoot thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially like all those shots that we saw in the trailers didn't even make it in the movie.
Exactly. It's like the whole first trailer of Rogue One was a complete lie.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, so what did I end up seeing? I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. Rogue One is probably my favorite of the Disney era films. But that said, it did have its issues with being made. So I think that rather than rip the movie away, which would really look bad, and also, if you think about it, she has a lot of experience as far as with her dad being a fighter pilot, and, I'm sure a lot of this is based on... She took some of it from the Rogue Squadron story, some of the comics, the books that have come out, but she also took a lot of things from her dad's personal experiences.
Right.
So... Yeah. I mean, unless you give it to like, there's a guy that took over Top Gun after Tony Scott died. I mean, I know Tom Cruise basically is really spearheading it, but they got somebody else in. Chat it in if you guys know.
But see, I'm also thinking about, because you saw what happened to Colin Trevorrow with 9. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not, and that's one of those things where it's like you don't know, like, okay, if I scrap this now and bring in a JJ to do it, then it's like, okay, But then you see what she was really going to do. Now you're like, man, I wish I would have saw the Patty version. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
So
can
then
see
now-
that happening. Just
so-
like I wish I had seen the Lord Miller version of Solo now.
Exactly. So I think this is once again, it's like a thing when you're, how much grace do we give directors when it comes to, and especially when it comes to, it's a little bit different when you coming up with something like, okay, so I finally did see Knives Out.
Wow, you hadn't seen it in all this time?
Right. I finally saw
Really?
Yeah. Finally saw Knives Out. But so I'm like, okay, once again, great film directed by Ryan Johnson. So, okay, now that was just kind of its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're dealing with characters that people have already, or events that are beloved by certain people. So you're dealing with a Star Wars community that's, of course, beloved by the Star Wars fans, and you're talking about Rogue Squadron. All right, well, there might be a section of people who really, really love Rogue Squadron, so you're ruining it for them if it doesn't come off well. Now, some people may not know that much about Rogue Squadron, so it may be cool for them. The whole thing is, though, when you're dealing with something like Knives Out, if it flopped, it flopped. Like, okay, no one cares. But like Wonder Woman, like people care about Wonder Woman, especially when you already had a successful movie to begin with.
That's the worst part of it.
So it's like
you're
you
coming
can't-
off of probably what's the best
Yeah.
DC film, and you give us this.
So it's kind of like, all right, now if you botch this up, and this is a big franchise, what are you going to do to our beloved Star Wars? You see what I'm saying? So
Well, and I mean, from that standpoint, maybe I can understand. But the only problem that I have with this line of thinking is that, and this is the case with Colin Trevorrow, I sometimes wonder really what was behind that. Because one of my
Yeah.
biggest issues is that, are you really going to keep looking at the box office performance or the critical reviews of all these directors' last films? And really, that's what you're going to do? I mean,
Well-
I get it from a business standpoint, you sort of have to, but the point is, like, look, if you hire a director,
Mhm.
it's going to be based on a couple of things. Now, granted, Patty Jenkins, she did the first Wonder Woman. She didn't have as much to do with what I think she gets a lot of credit for, but she did actually direct the movie, though.
Mhm.
So even though the story and a lot of things were already in place, she did have to bring that to life. She also had, I forgot what other movies. I'm really bad at this, but if you guys chat it in if you know. She's directed a couple other pretty cool movies. It's like, look, hire the directors based on their directing style and the stories that they bring to life and things that they tell. Don't base it on what the critics thought or what box office, stuff is based on. And you really can't. I mean, the Wonder Woman thing, it's like, yeah, okay, everybody was kind of, including the fans, are like, all right, well, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it wasn't a good follow-up to this.
Right. And like, so to Ronaldo's point, and then I was about to bring this up.
Oh, he's chatting in a lot, isn't he?
But my question is, I haven't seen the Wonder Woman, the second one yet.
Really?
No, I haven't. So my question is, what was it the story or was it the acting?
Well, Ronaldo says, I don't think Patty will lose her position as director. Although Wonder Woman 84 was not good, it was awful. She worked together with Jeff Johns, and it is possible that he also had responsibility. That's a good point. The problem with Wonder Woman is they had a pretty good first act. As far as all the stuff on the Scara, whatever the little Amazonian homeworld is, that was kind of cool. The problem is...
Oh, the mascara.
The mascara, that's it. The problem is that pretty much, and I'm trying to remember all the things that I said about it, but it was mostly a very disjointed film. Pedro Pascal's thing was just like over-the-top nonsense. I mean, it's not his fault. He did what he... It's kind of the Jar Jar thing, It's kind of like, look,
to do.
Yep, this is how they wanted me to play it, and this is what I did. But the story should have been, like a subplot. Cheetah should have been the main thing. And Kristen Wiig did a great job as Cheetah, which I was actually skeptical about. But she captured the nerdy part, which we all knew that would be the case. But she actually kind of before she was full-blown Cheetah and was just like confident and kind of had the powers. And then, you know, they would violate their own things all the time with this wish stone thing. I mean, spoiler alert. But it was just poorly done. You know, there was all these things that were just, it was very disjointed and very boring also.
Okay, so how much of it do you think the failure of it was due to the writing and story versus the directing?
Well, that's the big thing, see, because the problem when you're dealing with directing is directors do this all the time. They make the writers rewrite scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So the director has the power to do this. When they're not doing it, you know, there's an issue. It's like Steve Trevor's whole thing. Like, he gets into a jet, and it's like suddenly he knows how to fly, and the whole invisible jet thing was so dumb. And, I mean, there were just so many, you know, really bad things. In fact, let me see. I'm going to do this because, you know, this is a live stream, and we actually have time to do things like this.
Well, while you do that, I'm going to read some the other comments.
All right, well.
So Ronaldo says, in addition, it is true that she was not responsible for the story of the first Wonder Woman. If she was responsible, I think he was trying to say she was responsible for the execution. Ronaldo also says, and without a good execution, you cannot make a good movie. Facts. He also says she also directed Monster, which was great. Yeah,
Monster, that was a good one. Okay, so I say, I was really excited. The introduction of Cheetah in the films was a cool prospect, and thought maybe Pedro Pascal's character would add a bit of cohesive subplot that could be utilized and connected in future films. I was wrong. First act of the movie was actually cool. This made what followed even more disappointing. You have to understand, I still feel the first Wonder Woman is a well-done film that actually stands as a good drama with some comedy, as well as being a good movie. So what went wrong? To put it succinctly, execution was sloppy and the story grew disjointed. Pedro Pascal's character and story were more the primary plot, and Cheetah was there just to provide an exciting fight sequence. I thought Kristen Wiig was really good as a socially awkward woman trying to make her way through life, as well as the pulling off the transformation and, oh man, hold on, into it. Okay. Let me see what else. It was when the actual Cheetah character came up that it felt a bit strained and was unnecessarily over the top. Yeah, I mean, and that was basically the gist of it, is the fact that it just grew into this disjointed mess, and you really didn't know what movie you were watching after a while. And like I said, there were some aspects of it that I thought were really good. That's one of the things that kept me interesting, was I kept going, okay, well, I'll let this go. It'll develop. And I remember Doug, you know, he wrote to me, he was just like, that was awful. I think he hated it more than I did. I didn't think that it was truly terrible. I think the reason why people are reacting as like, oh, this is like an awful movie and all this, is because of what they expected after the first one. The first one being arguably the best one of the DCEU, and now you get this. You know, and there's a cool cameo at the end, which is, you know, I won't spoil that for anybody, but it's worth watching all the way through the mid-credits, guys. But that's the reason why I think that where Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy in particular might be going like, oh man, I don't want the fans to turn against, like, I don't want her to do something with this and make a bad decision here, especially because it's another franchise film. From that standpoint, I think that it would be a good thing. But at the same time, you don't really know all the variables involved.
True. You know, like we always say, though, this is a results-based industry.
Well, and it's also like, if you get all the credit, you also get all the blame.
Exactly. You know,
I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you have, you know, like Jeff Johns, you know, like Ronaldo pointed out. I mean, he did work with her, but it's kind of like, okay, well, how much was his? But look, if it's successful, she's going to get all the credit. So if it bombs, she's getting the credit.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things that I think that the actors were doing what they could with what they had. But it was just kind of messed up. They really should have stuck with the plot of Cheetah and the Wishstone and how she got it and how it, because if they had done that, I think it would have been a little bit better of a film. And it was actually a lot of the stuff with Steve Trevor in it was great. In fact, one of the things that I will say that's really good about the movie was they flip-flopped the fish out of water thing. So in the first movie, it was Diana that was the fish out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Steve had to kind of guide her through and all this other stuff. Well, even though Steve is from, you know, like the U.S. and he's aware of this stuff, now he's all of a sudden in 1984. She's been there the whole time. Now he's the fish out of water.
Right.
And they could have really made that stupid and messed it up. But I thought they actually did really well. They didn't do it cliched, and they didn't just repeat what they did with her. They made it a little bit different.
So, do you think that? I guess my thing is if you're basing things on your last film, and especially if it's a major thing like Wonder Woman or a Marvel movie or something like that, and it's not even by the critics, but by critics and fans who all say that's the thing. Like critics and fans are both like, "Yo, this sucks." And you're going into a Star Wars. Now you're jumping from DC to now Star Wars. As a fan, are you confident?
I'm comfortable.
Okay.
I'm totally comfortable because I don't necessarily think that all the conditions that surrounded Wonder Woman 84 would necessarily repeat themselves in this. The other thing is that I think that she would actually have, because this is such a personal project, I mean, it's Wonder Woman, man. I mean, anybody that's going into it, I mean, unless they're like some Wonder Woman fan, is going to go into it a little differently. This is an actual personal project to her, something that she knows something about. I think that it's in good hands. She's a really good director.
But with that, could it... So, okay, it's personal for her. I get that. But that doesn't always mean it translates to Star Wars.
No, but I mean, she's still like probably in the top 10 best directors that are out today. I mean, nobody can really take that away from her. You know, I mean, she has a bad movie that, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, like, interviews that she does, like, if stuff is going to come out that, hey, I really wanted to do this, but they wouldn't let me, and
yeah,
we don't know.
Because, I mean, like, to your point, and the only reason why I'm asking this question the way I'm asking is because, to your point you made earlier, you said, well, okay, as a director, you have the power to change if you see that things aren't working. The fact that you didn't realize that a vast majority of this movie was not working. You let it go. Why?
Yeah, I don't.
That's what, as a fan, that's my question. And
again, you know, you can also use the Rian Johnson comparison because he's another really amazing director, and look at what he did. and you know, Kathleen Kennedy's got to be thinking that in the back of her mind, like, oh man, I don't want another Rian Johnson issue on my hands. But
right.
But at the same time, you also have to look at the fact that, and this is where I think that sometimes Kathleen Kennedy is too hot or too cold. They just left Rian Johnson alone. I mean, she was all over, like Gareth Edwards and even JJ to a degree, right? But, I mean, to the point where she was almost micromanaging. She almost overstepped her bounds. She forgot she was not a producer and she was a studio head. But then with Rian Johnson, it's kind of like, you know, oh yeah, he's working on this thing, and no, it seemed like there was nothing.
No oversight.
Yeah, no oversight at all. And I think that that's part of where it's a team effort. Like I said, I don't think that the failure of Wonder Woman 84 falls strictly on Patty Jenkins' shoulders. I just don't. I mean, yeah, she probably made some really dumb decisions. She could have ordered some rewrites. We don't know what the studio heads were saying. We don't know what anybody else was saying. We don't know. I mean, we can go by the fact that it's like, well, you know, this is the first one she kind of did on her own. without it being set up like the first one was. And she says she already has stories for a Wonder Woman 3 and 4. So she's obviously invested in it. But that's where I think that you have to look at some things. The other thing, too, is that maybe you do bring her in to direct this, but maybe, you give Favreau a call and you say, hey,
Watch this one.
we give you, like, a truckload of cash. Could you just go and sort of, I don't know, oversee this? Or maybe bring Filoni in to do that?
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of things. Oh, wow, the
Yeah,
chat's gone a little bit crazy.
Yeah, let's go with, all right, we're going to start with your mom. She said, if there were a Thrawn movie, who would you like to direct?
Oh, yeah, Thrawn. Well, this is a good question that may seem like it's not part of this conversation, but it is. Because it's one of those things that you have to be very, very careful about who you get to direct stuff.
Sure.
So that said, I mean, Rian Johnson.
Hands down, right?
Right, I mean, come on. I don't know. It's interesting too because like a lot of these other guys, like you get like a John Campea type dude. These guys are up on all these people.
All the different directors.
All the different directors and can name like the 60 films that, they've done or whatever. And it's kind of like, I mean, I'm into that to a degree, but it's sort of like I'm not. I mean, I'll judge these films based on it. And I'm aware of who the directors are when, the stuff is released, but not every one of them. There's a lot of movies that I see where, I don't know who the director is and I don't care. I'm more interested in the story, maybe who's in it. There's only a handful of directors I really care about. Now, that said, yeah, Thrawn you have to handle really, really carefully. That's another one. Like, I'd give somebody Rogue Squadron. I mean, granted, I know it's got its insane rabid fans too, but Thrawn, you really can't mess up Thrawn. I mean, Thrawn's somebody that you have to give that to more of a heavyweight. So what I'm going to do is what every good host does. I'm going to toss that one out to the chat. And then the comment section. Who do you guys think should direct the Thrawn movie? For me, if I have to go into, because if I can't name the directors, I can at least name the movies. You know who actually would probably be good was Steven Spielberg.
I was thinking him.
Spielberg would actually be good. I'm not just saying that because he's like a famous director everybody knows. I mean, he's somebody that I think could really handle the Thrawn character really, really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be a really cool thing to do. As far as some of the other guys, I mean, it just has to be a director that understands the character. Because I think that's one of the problems that we've been having in the Star Wars universe is that the reason why Favreau and Filoni are so successful is because they really get this stuff. And that's where I think that, who was it? Was it Deborah Chow that basically was all like, or no, it wasn't her. Was it? Who was the one that said, I want to live in Star Wars? And that may have been Patty Jenkins.
No, that was Hetland, I think.
Oh, yeah. Leslie Hetland.
Leslie
Yeah.
Hetland.
Yeah. See, now, I don't know, but I'm saying get somebody like her maybe. Because you need somebody that really understands the characters and understands the universe. And I think that's the biggest problem is that a lot of these people are taking the characters and they're saying, okay, they're comparing it to somebody, say, in just a normal movie franchise, right? But it's like you can't do that. I mean, you really have to understand the universe because you have to understand the context of these characters. And I think that's where a lot of the directors are falling short. So he says, and I think Patty will put a lot of emotional scenes in Rogue Squadron considering what it means to her. Absolutely. Ronaldo also goes on to say that cameo, he's talking about Wonder Woman 84, was amazing. And then he says, Ronaldo's chatted a lot since we last checked this. If it wasn't for Cheetah, it would be Wonder Woman's version of Superman Returns. That's actually kind of what it reminded me of. Honestly, was a little bit of that. That it kind of had that vibe to me. I'm also comfortable. I think she will do a good job. Recently, she acknowledged that the movie was very long, which I agree with, indicating that she may be learning from her mistakes. And then he says, I don't know why, but I'd like to see Christopher Nolan direct a Thrawn movie. That would be an interesting choice. And I think that a lot of that comes from, there's that detective side of Batman, the darkness, but the hero, the tug of war. There are certain parallels that you can draw to Thrawn with that. But yeah, I just think that whoever it is needs to be somebody that really gets the universe, that it's not a job to them. And they're not just researching the characters or whatever. Like, they really know this stuff. On the other hand, you kind of had that in The Rise of Skywalker with JJ and, I keep forgetting the guy's name that co-wrote it with him. Mm-hmm. The guy that co-wrote it with him was a canon junkie. So there is that. Yeah, there's a handful of people out there that I think could probably handle Thrawn really well, but you just have to be really careful.
I would say Courtney A. Kemp.
Oh, who are you looking up?
No, I mean, no, she directs the show Power.
Oh, okay.
But I like what she does, like how she uses like the different, like she'll look at psychology. So she'll look at stuff like a person being a sociopath, and she'll like, okay, how would I play this person? And then the twists and turns that she brings into that particular series, I think that could fit in Thrawn's kind of world, where Thrawn is very cerebral. He's very calm. He's very calculating. And I just think if she is a Star Wars fan, or if she can adapt that into Star Wars, I think she would do a great job with that.
Well, because the other question you got to answer too is who writes it. It's not just who directs it; it's who writes it.
And that's another thing too. She's a really good writer too.
I'd say get the Cobra Kai guys. As crazy as that sounds, I mean, if those guys are even half Star Wars fans as they are Cobra or Karate Kid fans,
yeah.
I mean, the writing on that show is insanely good.
Absolutely.
And it's because they know every little nuance of that franchise that they're bringing a lot of stuff in, and they know how to bring in fan service without it being so on the nose. You know,
right.
Those guys really get somebody like that. If you don't get them, get somebody like that. That's where I think you have to do. Oh, Ronaldo says his name is Chris Terrio. And yes, I know, yeah. He's done some, or what else? It's so funny. A lot of times I blank on this stuff. Like, I'll know this stuff, before, and then we go on, I get relaxed. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't remember anything at this point. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I think that, and that's what goes into this, is that I think the mistake that Lucasfilm makes is they announce all these directors and they hype them and they do all this stuff, and then they're like, oh, well, they're not really able to do what we want them to do, so they got to go.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just, like I said, I think it's one of those things that it takes a looking at, just because, like I said, it's the first movie, that we're getting.
Yeah, I know.
That's
true.
What I'm saying. Like, it's the first movie after Rise of Skywalker.
That's true. It is very important.
And everybody's just kind of like, okay, even though it's not like a saga film or anything like that, but it's still like,
this is the one where they're going to be like, okay, we're going to give the movies another shot.
Yeah, and just
if this one disappoints,
yeah, we just rather just keep.
Then Star Wars becomes a TV franchise.
Exactly.
And that would be a shame.
Yeah, especially like when you have people like, Filoni and Favreau, who I will eventually would love to see them do actual film.
Well, but then again, it could also be like a Netflix original. I mean, the thing that's pretty funny, especially with Warner Brothers releasing all their main movies on HBO Max in 2021, and AMC every other day is threatening bankruptcy. I mean, it kind of sucks, but I can honestly see that I don't think it's going to be the death of movies. I think it's going to be the death of theatrical presentations. To where it becomes like it goes the way of the drive-in almost. Even though that's making a comeback, I think with streaming, with a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, you're not really seeing a difference anymore between movies and television and all this other stuff. They can easily just make movies, full-length feature movies, and put them on Disney Plus. And that would actually bring an audience to it, and then it's not as costly. It's not, of course, they're not going to reap the same benefits. They're not going to make $2 billion.
Right.
And that's the other thing. It's kind of like a lot of these theaters have to face that. It's like, what do you do when you have something like Black Widow that you've spent $1 gazillion on, and you have to put that in theaters to make the money back? But it's not like everybody's going to go flocking to the theaters anytime soon.
Right.
Sure, they're open now, but at least in Michigan,
Yeah.
not yet anyway, you can't buy concessions.
Or I would say, like, in certain areas here, you can.
In certain areas, you can do a full-blown thing, and in others you can't. And even once, the vaccine will get around or whatever, but it's kind of like a post that I put on Facebook, which, of course, a lot of people misunderstood. But
hot water like Pablo.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, well, it's not as crazy of a reaction as some of the other things that I posted innocently and just gotten blasted for. But I was like, everybody's acting like as soon as the calendar switched to 2021, the
pandemic goes away.
Yeah, that magically everything was, I can't wait till 2020 is gone. Yay, 2021, here we come. And I'm like, okay, realize that the first half, maybe more, but at least the first half of 2021 is going to look a lot like 2020. And that includes for entertainment. And that's why you have all these theaters like scrambling to make money. You have the Hollywood studios that are trying to figure out what to do because it's not like, it's 2021. Good. Everything's going to be magically cool again. I mean, it's going to take some time. Even once the vaccine gets around, you're talking early to like spring to late spring at the earliest in order for there probably to be enough herd immunity and stuff like that. And even after that, it's not like people are going to be necessarily feeling too safe. I mean, sure, you're going to get all the people. I mean, look at what people have been doing now. But it's going to be a while before things return to what we would all call normal.
True.
And so I think that you have to wonder, I think that this is going to play into the Rogue Squadron movie because it's coming out in 2023. So I think around that time, maybe if, things haven't totally changed by then, people might just want to go see it because they just want to go out and see a movie. It's experience that again.
Alrighty.
Oh, yeah. When he was talking about Chris Terrio, that was a co-writer, by the way, of Rise of Skywalker. I should have clarified that when Ronaldo put that. Then Ronaldo also says he worked in Batman v Superman, really good, and Justice League, awful. I'm really curious on
that director's cut.
The Zack Snyder one that's coming on HBO Max this year, though. Because, they've shot a ton of new scenes for everybody's saying it's basically going to be a different movie.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that, too.
Now, here's a question, though. This is actually, and this just occurred to me. Is it necessarily out of the question, then, to get a different cut of A Rise of Skywalker? Or even some of the other things? If we can accept the fact that Justice League was out in theaters, and then you even had the extended version, because remember, as it stands right now, we have the theatrical version, and then we have the extended cut, or whatever they call it. Okay? Now they're going and they got the Zack Snyder cut that's coming out, that they're actually releasing, and they've shot a ton of new footage for it. They've done all this stuff to where it's almost going to be a different movie now. Could that then open the door for Star Wars to be softly rebooted in some cases?
But you still have to answer the question, though, which one is the real one?
Well, I'm just saying that if they're doing that with Justice League,
right? But
everybody's going to consider the Zack Snyder cut the real one. You know what it's going to be? It's whichever one they like better.
Exactly.
If it sucks, everybody would be like, well,
but see, my thing is, it can't, you can add scenes too, but you can't change the main story, though. So you can't have a Star Wars Rise of Skywalker thing, but then okay,
They don't have to. Remember the George Lucas cut actually had like 40 minutes of extra footage, and it
Right.
well,
But
whatever
I mean,
was rumored anyway.
yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. But I mean, like if you can't change, like, oh well, Palpatine never came back. You some like the things that you need to fix with Rise of Skywalker. It's
Well, they could get some of the actors back, reshoot. Palpatine was in a few scenes that were key, and obviously you'd have to redo the whole ending, but you could technically.
I mean, the
do
opening
it.
crawl has Palpatine. I mean, like that's
Well,
what
you could just hit the delete button and retype.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like that's what I'm saying. Like you might as well just reshoot the whole movie.
What I'm
over.
saying is, and that's what I think the Zack Snyder thing is going to do. I think people are actually underestimating this, is that when you start opening the door to introducing a vastly, from what I understand and have read about this thing, it changes the story. It completely changes the story. It's not the same movie that we all saw in theaters. And if that's true, and that proves to be successful, I think that could start to bleed over into other franchises.
I will have to see it then before I make that determination.
Well, I think we all do. Not only do we have to see it, but I think we also have to see the effects of it. It's going to be one of those things where if enough people sort of get behind that, it's kind of like the de-aging technology. Look at how fast that's moving.
Yeah, but I mean, like technology versus like changing an entire story.
There's a huge thing that's been going around that's absolutely true, is the ethical nature of doing this, because the technology allows you, if you want to make a new John Wayne movie, you can do it. You just get some actor that kind of looks like him, put his face on there.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. What I'm saying is changing like a story that's like, okay, you take something like, all right, like you can't just be like, all right, well, next season of Cobra Kai, Mr. Miyagi comes back. Like he's dead. Literally,
oh, man, I wasn't gonna spoil it for you.
Like literally, the actual actor is dead.
Zombie Miyagi? Sign me up.
And you have, in universe, he's dead. So it's kind of like...
Well, in universe, he's dead. But if he hadn't been dead, they could just find some dude that kind of has the same build as him. And
I'm fine with that, but that's not changing the story, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're changing the story where, like, Miyagi was once dead and then now all of a sudden he's running around again, like, I got a problem with that. So, like, you give me Palpatine, it's like, okay, well, Palpatine's back, and then all of a sudden, in this movie, Palpatine's not here. It's like...
Well, I mean, I agree to the point of they might as well just make Duel of the Fates if they were going to.
That's
go
what I'm
that
saying.
far.
Like, if you're going to do it, just do a whole completely different movie.
But you never know. They might. I mean, again, now we started out the show by saying they probably aren't going to do it, that they're going to use TV to softly reboot everything. And 10 or 15 years from now, maybe they'll start to change some things. I mean, it's an interesting time.
And we're back to Duel of the Fates, ladies and gentlemen.
I know. We're fighting more now than we did then. That's usually the case, though. It's usually some stupid little thing.
Yep. Get a bee in our bonnet, and we're
Hey, gets viewers. Should probably actually like fight, like get heated conversations.
Yep.
We're like not speaking to each other 3 days, and we have to cool out. Then we do it all over again. That'd be
we're
wonderful.
like Stephen A. Smith, and not Stephen A. Smith, like Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. Come on, Eric.
Oh, that's great. But I just think that it's going to be, because I never thought they were going to release that cut.
Well, I mean, and that's
just because of a lot of the things you're talking about, it makes it. I mean, it's one thing to put additional scenes into something to give something more context. When you start sort of altering towards a different movie, it goes to what you're saying. Like, well, now which one's the real one?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think you have to go with what was actually in the box office. Like, you have to go based upon like what was actually signed off on versus like.
You mean what was first?
Yeah, I mean, because this is like, like the Richard Donner version of Superman, right?
Yeah, the Superman 2 thing where they released that. But then again, you could flip that argument around, though, because that was actually the original version that they changed. Same thing with the Zack Snyder thing. That was what he really wanted. Then, his dad got sick or whatever it was, and then he had to bail, and then they finished a movie he didn't really like. So now he's going back to make what he wanted to make in the first place. So really, from a certain point of view, there's that phrase again. This is really the original one.
And if you I could hang with that. If there's like an extenuating circumstance like that, like okay, I get it. But you, other than that though, it's kind of
I
like
know there's a slippery slope to it because
yeah,
it's kind of like, okay, now are we just gonna, a couple years later we decide we didn't like a movie and we're just gonna redo it?
yeah, exactly. Like, and watch it be some classic movie or something like, all right, you know what? I don't like the '89 Batman. Let's just change it and nah,
Yeah. Now, there's one thing about doing a remake versus actually going in and
right, because the remake is just like okay, you got different people playing the roles, but the story's intact.
right. It's almost like you never really, or very rarely, I can't think of anything offhand, but you never see a remake that has the exact same actors as the original.
Right. Dwight says retconning like that would definitely be a slippery slope, and I didn't like 8 or 9, so I won't protest about it.
Well, and that's where I think a lot of the fans are falling, actually, is the fact that, you had this situation where people were pretty dissatisfied with 8 and 9. Most people are giving a pat. Like, people have a problem with the derivative nature of 7. Most people like 7. Everybody still had goodwill towards Disney Star Wars on 7.
So my whole thing is this then, like, okay, let's just say they redo 8 and 9, but okay, what if you can't get the actors to come back?
Well, my problem is you definitely can't get Carrie Fisher to come back, and that's the whole. See,
Well, I mean,
I
not
could
even
hang
that,
with it. Well,
but I'm even talking about like
well, right,
Daisy Ridley.
sure, and Oscar Isaac. I mean, unless
Yeah.
he needs a new house right now, he's not coming back. But I mean, let's just say you could get them back. The fact that had the original trilogy characters,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like that's going to be the legitimate one no matter what. You would actually have to remake that entire trilogy down the line, and nobody's even remaking Star Wars, much less movies that just came out. Now, granted, Star Wars is revered, and these movies are nobody likes them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and goes to Dwight's point. I bet you if they announced tomorrow they were remaking The Last Jedi, you'd have 80% of the fan base being all behind it.
Only way I can see them doing that is if they didn't touch Carrie Fisher's parts.
Well, what I think they would have to do, like, here's my thing. If you're going to remake it,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, if you're going to remake those, remake the whole trilogy and do it almost like the Timothy Zahn trilogy. De-age characters and make Han, Luke, and Leia a little bit, like, have it take place, like, probably not too long after The Mandalorian or something. Because if you're going to remake it, you might as well do something vastly different. Because you're right, the only way that you can get around the Carrie Fisher thing, first of all, if you remake Episode 8, and this is where, again, it becomes a semantical issue, because on one hand, since people didn't really have the biggest problem with 7, you could then take it into, this is what 8 and 9 should have been in this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just go, you know what? Let's just tell a different trilogy. And if you're going to do that, the best thing to do, as crazy as it sounds, is make Lucas's 7, 8, and 9. Because they had nothing to do with the original characters. Well, they kind of did, but they didn't. Luke trained Kira, who they ended up, like, using that name for
Solo.
Emilia Clarke's character in Solo. They spelled it differently, but it's pronounced the same.
All right. But see, my thing is, if you're going to, like I said, if you're going to redo 8 and 9, the only thing is you can't, like, okay, Carrie Fisher, you have to leave her alone. You have to leave whatever scenes, because one, I mean, you're dealing with the original trilogy characters, and then two, it's kind of like, well, you're tampering kind of with her legacy.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
kind
true.
of like,
That's true. You are nullifying her last.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to. That's what I'm saying. Like, you kind of have to just either just let it ride and just realize you just take the L and just realize we screwed up, or if you're going to do it again, you really have to be pay very close attention. This is like if you're gonna redo 8 and 9, you better have Favreau and Filoni doing it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a
I
given.
don't think fans would take it any other way.
No, that's a given. And here's what I would do. Here's how they could get around it. You could sort of redo it if you made movies that took place in between each one of them and had them slightly tweak things a little bit to where it lessened the impact. Because if you had, say, you had the trilogy, but let's just say you put a bunch of movies in between 7 and 8 and 8 and 9, and now suddenly instead of 3 movies, it's like 6. It somewhat lessens the impact of 7, 8, and 9. Now, granted, you would have some problems because what do you call them? But, I mean, they're just standalone films.
The other thing, though, is like, you brought up the whole de-aging thing. And I'm like, see, once again, I as much as happy as I was to see, Mark Hamill in Mandalorian, like the look of it was perfect. But they still haven't fixed the mouth part yet.
But you're forgetting something. That was a TV budget.
I get it.
And this shows you how much they've come, how far they've come.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they could barely do it in a movie, and now they could do it in a TV. And the TV version is having the same issue that the movie version had like 4 or 5 years ago. And you got to remember the de-aging thing. Look at what they did with Michael Douglas and Ant-Man.
Oh yeah, I get, like I said,
and Wasp. I
but
mean,
see, that's what I'm
like,
saying. I think it depends on who's doing it because I think it's hit and miss. Because you in the same thing when you had like you had Rogue One when you had it with Tarkin,
but that was made 4 years ago.
And no, but I'm just saying like Rogue, it's still the same thing, same movie though. Rogue One, you had Tarkin. His mouth didn't match well.
Right, but I'm just saying that technology was brand new when they did that.
But what I'm saying is Leia in that same movie was better.
Because Leia had one line. One line. She just said hope. She didn't say a whole sentence. She didn't say like a gazillion things. She just said one word.
That's true.
So that's what I'm saying. Like the de-aging thing has actually jumped forward by leaps and bounds. Like every year they've been able to do stuff with it. And now on the Marvel side of it, they've been using it liberally. Look at what they did with Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel. That was insane. To the point where it wasn't even noticeable. That's what you can do when you're actually throwing a ton of money and now you have like...
Mm-hmm.
And now they're even able to do it in television. With a television budget. Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, The Mandalorian's a little bit more than most television shows. It's far less than any movie budget. So, from that standpoint, and especially as time goes on and it keeps getting perfected, I think that they could do it. The question is, do you really want to rely on that?
True. Ronaldo says, I don't want them to retcon the sequels.
Whoops. It's like I was just about to hit it and he commented something else. All right, go ahead.
I don't want them to retcon the sequels, but if they do, I hope it's similar to the way JJ did it with Star Trek.
Well, the funny thing about that was that's why we were all jumping up and down that he was doing Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't even a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, right, exactly.
In fact, he barely even saw any of them. And look at what he did with Star Trek. And he was a huge Star Wars fan. So we were all like, oh, man, can you imagine what this guy's going to do with Star Wars?
Right.
Now, to his credit, everybody did love 7.
Yeah.
And the problem is
they reasonably like 9. But
yeah, I mean, everybody, exactly. They had some problems with 9, but everybody kind of understood, like, what's he going to do? I mean, he's following 8. I mean,
right.
There's only so much you can do.
Then he says, as for the original trilogy actors, the truth is I have no problem if they recast personally.
Well, he also says, and if they completely redo the sequels,
I would like to see the history of Skywalker's grandchildren, whether they are from the same legends or totally new characters.
And again, that goes into the expanded universe thing. That's where I actually think that, this is why I think that they should really start taking a second look at the expanded universe. Really, they should have done that all along. I mean, I get the fact that they wanted to do stuff, but they have to understand, when they bought the franchise in 2012, at that time, the Thrawn trilogy was like 21 years old. Star Wars fans have been living with those storylines for a couple of decades. And that's really what they should have done. What they should have done was taken maybe that as a template and then... Now, granted, I know Lucas wasn't going to do that either. He had his own story to tell. But it just would have made more sense for them to maybe make some slight alterations to the expanded universe, which if you look, that's what they've been doing. I mean, they've been doing that with Thrawn. They brought Thrawn back in. Okay, they introduced him before the original trilogy, like kind of in between the prequels and the original trilogy, when originally he was more like where the Mandalorian is now, which is why it makes perfect sense for them. And I think that that's what they're doing. I think the reason why they brought up his name in the Mandalorian is they're going to be like, look, this is going to be more like the Thrawn that in the time period you remember. You know, but it'll be really interesting to see what they do because, as you pointed out, I mean, this Rogue Squadron thing is going to be the first movie that we see after, after 9. After 9. And it's going to be back how Rogue One was when it was like the very first standalone non-saga film ever. Rogue One is going to have that same kind of weight on it. Now, the interesting part is going to be...
Rogue Squadron?
What did I say?
Rogue One. You do the same thing I do sometimes. I get it.
Man,
I know. I do the same thing.
all the time. I know. I hate the fact that those things are...
yeah, because you got Rogue One and Rogue Squadron, so you...
Yeah, I mean, I actually, even on this little picture we got down, down there.
Yeah.
I almost put the Rogue One logo by mistake. I was so happy I didn't do it. That was insane. But what about you guys? What do you guys, you see where we're standing on all kinds of things when it comes to the filmmaking stuff. But as far as Rogue Squadron goes, I want to make sure I say that Rogue Squadron, not one squadron. Where do you guys think that the whole fate of Patty Jenkins stands? Do you think she's going to lose the movie? Do you think they're going to keep her on, but supervised visits, as it were? Where do you guys think that she stands now that Wonder Woman 1984 is not living up to either critic or fan expectations? Make sure you let us know in the comments section.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.